Today's video is brought to you by LA Police Gear. Oh, hey, what's going on, Gideon's Tactical family? Well, you know what? The SOG Vision XR has been on my want list since it was originally released. And now, after having carried it for quite a bit, I think this is a misunderstood pocket knife, and there are several superb attributes to the design. But that's not to say it doesn't have any flaws, because there are a few. And so make sure to stick around to the end, where I'm going to highlight two must-have alternative pocket knives that really are steep competition to the Vision XR. And you guys will have to forgive my voice. I'm kind of under the weather a little bit, and this kind of crazy styling today, because I'm doing a bunch of work, doing other testing indoors because we got like over a foot of snow in the backyard, and I'm reorganizing some stuff for the studio itself. So we're gonna do this kind of a different way today. So this knife really goes against the grain on a lot of recent pocket knife trends that tend to emphasize lightweight and slim in their designing. This is the exact opposite. It's thick, compact, and heavy for its size. And that's because it's designed for a particular type of user. SOG calls them professionals. In layman's terms, that means that it is designed for heavy-duty utility and combat usage. So if you understand the role that the knife is designed to play, it begins to make a lot more sense with some of the features and design choices that went into the tool. So let's get to the nitty-gritty with the blade and its steel shape. And I gotta say, I love that freaking shape, guys. It's a modified tanto. What that means is that it's got belly and sweep to this front portion where most would be an abrupt angle. You got that sweep into that transition point and then into a straight edge. You can get them plain edge or serrated, so there are versions that you can, a combo edge. I went with plain edge because I prefer that, but I love it. This portion right here is a great contact point to cut open certain material, which is great. And then that slight sweep on that tip means that it's a little bit better at slicing than just a straight up tanto, but then giving you great piercing capability. It's going to be an 1/8 of an inch thick, basically all the way through, and then just tapers at that end. And that's a strong tip. Again, designed for that stabbing and piercing with saber grind that goes up about 2/3 of the way, and not a super thick behind the edge feel, but because of the design, you know, it did good, better than I expected on like cardboard and, you know, stuff like that. But it really shines when you're either stabbing through something or you're going through like cordage and rubber and tubing and, you know, like heavy materials is really what it's designed for and where you're going to see it excel at in the use. And now going against the grain also for a combat, quote unquote, you know, whatever, tactical pocket knife, whatever, a lot of those tend to be more like 4 inches. This is 3.1 inches of cutting edge and like 3.3 on the overall from handle scale to tip. So it's more compact, meaning more carryable, but it is on the more compact side of these, as SOG would call them, professional design tools. Now that's going to bring us into the steel choice that they went with, which is very exciting and I like it. It's CTS XHP steel. Now it's kind of an exotic steel. You don't really see it a lot. I guess it's pretty hard to get your hands on. Not a lot of manufacturers make it, use it. But it's a great steel. I've had it on a few blades and it's excellent. It's basically genesis from the desire to make D2 steel more corrosion resistant and a little bit tougher. And so they combined the properties of 440C with D2 and came up with this type of steel. You know, this knife is made in Taiwan, so we know that it's sourced well and it's excellent. I really like what I'm seeing out of the edge retention, but also the corrosion resistance and just how the tool is being, you know, applied. Now we're about to run to our first snag on the tool, but before we get there, I want to give a quick shout out to today's sponsor, which is LA Police Gear. Now, I've been so glad to have LA Police Gear as a regular sponsor here at the channel for going on 2 years, and I'm glad to regularly partner with them because of the massive variety of really well-established gear that myself and many of you use on a daily basis, giving you and me, the user, reliable gear to choose from, regardless if it's a day at the range, our everyday carry systems that we're updating, or days in the backcountry on outdoor adventures. But LA Police Gear's own brand of gear and equipment also really excels, and I want to highlight specifically the Terrain Stealth series of packs that I've recently tested out 2 of them and been very impressed with, because you're getting a lot of capability for a budget-friendly price point, and it's hard to find all of the features as well as materials in models at this price point. You usually have to sacrifice many of those other key features or materials, but LA Police Gear is able to accomplish both and give us a really well-balanced messenger bag, sling bag, and backpack. And so I invite you guys to check out that link in the description box below, as well as my exclusive 10% off promo code that can be applied site-wide over there at LA Police Gear, and check out all that they have to offer. So let's hit this lockup and deployment, and maybe a few sticky points that I have on the model. Now this has the XR lock that is rated for 1,500 pounds of downward force. So, which is basically just their take on the original axis lock that Benchmade, pioneered all those years ago. The patent has now gone. So it's that style, you just pull back and the bar moves back and forth. Hopefully you guys can see that back in there. The bar is really buried in there. Very nice. And when I grip the tool, I was reading somewhere that somebody had some issues with their finger being right where the blade is, and they were concerned about it the lock slide. I don't know how you would ever do that. I mean, maybe if your thumb and you did like a gun motion, but then again, yeah, even that doesn't, it starts to give some play to the blade, but so even the placement of the lock, I have zero issues with on my large size hands. We'll hit the deployment real quick. You get 3 options. And all 3 will be able to be engaged and then disengaged with gloves on. Excellent centering, and the tip is buried in there nicely, so you're not gonna accidentally pull it out or nick it and cause issues to yourself. So here is the first issue that I have. There's a little bit of play there, and hopefully you guys can hear that. So there's this rattling that was going on, and I don't have that on the SOG TAC, which we'll talk about in competitive options momentarily. It's tight, and there's no play there, where there's definitely a little bit of up and down. Then it hits the detent, and then you really have to think about overcoming the detent, but I just didn't like that. And I was kind of like, that's kind of weird, and it just feels a little loose in there with that micronic movement before it hits the detent. Then you have to overcome the detent. So I don't know. I didn't really care for that. It's not a deal breaker, but it's something that it's always kind of like, why is it? I wish it was just tight like the SOG TAC or any of my other crossbar blades. Next up is the pivot itself. It is caged ball bearings on bronze washers, I guess. You see bronze and then you see the ball bearings in there. So what that means is it's nice and smooth. I mean, I can literally at an angle drop that thing into the handle there. So I mean, I love that. That's no issue, and it's super smooth. I mean, it just glides. They're kind of noisy, so not as quiet as other blades that I've used and owned. So not the end of the world, but you kind of hear it, and you maybe feel a little bit of like inside the deployment. And ball bearings, though great for general EDC carry, I prefer bronze washers when possible. They're just less maintenance, less likelihood of getting sand, grit, grime in that can be troublesome. So it would have been great to have these just on bronze washers. It's a well thought out handle, G10 scales. This is a tan version. There's OD green. Usually black on black is the generic design that you're gonna find. The light versions have some high-vis colors as well, and I'll talk about the lights here. This is the standard version in just a moment. So G10 scales that are medium grit, not slick, but not super coarse and heavy. I feel like it's perfect. The handle length is gonna be 4.6 inches overall length, and then it's gonna be 0.45 on the thickness, just to give you some perspective. Here's a Spyderco Manix, and I don't know how well you're gonna be able to tell. It's probably about maybe 3/16, maybe an eighth of an inch thicker on the thickness. So again, girthy. It feels full in the hand. Steel liners that are milled out, making it weigh 4.4 ounces for the standard model. So for 3.5 inch or 3.1 inch blade, it's definitely in today's market on the heavier end, as I said, but it feels very well built. Fills out my hands very nicely, both in that standard hammer grip and in a reverse stabbing grip. I feel very locked in. And with my large size gloves, I still have full grip and control over the knife. They didn't get carried away with the jimp either. Jimping up there, a little bit of scalloping on the sides of the scale, but nowhere else. A lot of brands, they do all this jimping inside your finger groove here and on the back end and just all over the place. There's a very mild hit on the back. So again, I think they did a really good job, and that's what's making it be just this really nice blending of giving you everything you would want in a more heavy-duty utility professional role, but not going overboard and making it almost unusable for anyone else. Now, they are trying to scratch that itch that is very popular right now of lightweight blades, which I don't think is necessary, but they have come out with this light version recently that it's the exact same blade from everything I can tell, except instead of steel liners, they have done carbon fiber liners. And that shaves 1 ounce or 25% of the weight off of the blade. So those are going to be about 3.5 ounces. So that's definitely lighter. So if that's something that you care about, that's nice. It will impact the price pretty significantly, that we'll talk about in just a moment when I hit competitive options. Now, I've heard people complain about the pocket clip, and I do get that it is a high ride, not a low ride. And it is pretty obtuse. It's large. You're going to see it. You're going to feel it. But again, we got to think through what is the purpose of this. This isn't to be worn, going to the office. This is designed for people who are wearing heavy duty work pants like Carhartts, for people who are wearing, reinforced tactical pants that often have thick pockets, and is perfectly designed for that role because of the way it is intended. It's got that double reinforcement of the loop, so it's wide, so it's going to support the blade for a longer period of time. It's tip down, ambidextrous, so perfect. And what that means is I've yet to find a pair of pants that this does not go over, which is excellent. And then you do have this nice pinch point, so even with gloves on, because it rides higher in the pocket, you're able to grab and pull out and then deploy it quicker. And when you use it with gloves, you won't even know that it's there. Using bare hands and in a hammer grip, and you're gonna like cut hemp rope for 10 minutes, yeah, you're gonna feel that a little bit in the back of your hand. It's not unbearable, but it's definitely noticeable. In a reverse hammer grip though, for stabbing, it actually supports your finger really well and cuts right there and gives you good ergonomics in that sense. So now down to the moment of truth, competitive options and pricing. This is usually gonna go for about $150 for the model that you see here. Made in Taiwan, really good steel, and a lot of excellent features, a few quirks that you may or may not be willing to overlook, but that's a pretty competitive market. Compared to the original model, there are two other good contenders. One, as I highlighted a little bit earlier, it's the SOG tack from SOG. This has the XR lock as well. G10 stainless steel liners, thumb studs, finger flipper, locking mechanism, manual, exact same pocket clip. It's going to be even heavier by an ounce. It's about 5.4 ounces. So it's beefy, but about the same blade length, maybe 3.5, but a much slicier blade. High saber grind, clip point. You can get these serrated. 80 bucks made in China. Would have been great to see it at 80 bucks made in Taiwan, like the Vision XR, but for $80, this is an excellent blade, and it's one of my favorites, particularly for this kind of style, and still checks a lot of those professional, heavy duty tactical feel. And guys, throughout the video, I'm gonna have links to all these blades from the Vision to the competitive options. So if one of these tools makes sense for you, appreciate when you use the hyperlinks below. Now, kind of on the flip side, this one doesn't have a crossbar lock, but it has CTS XHP made in Taiwan. It's from Spartan Blades bronze line. This is one of my probably top 5 pocket knives I've ever owned, seriously. It's gonna be 3.5 inches, high saber grind. Again, that excellent steel, G10. You can get like a carbon fiber G10 blend on the black, ambidextrous, bronze washers in here. So that's excellent and gonna be a little bit more durable on the pivot. Not as fast, and it has a liner lock, but a very good, strong liner lock that's been milled, loop over, pocket clip. It's a little bit more deep ride, but an excellent tool and a little bit of a higher saber grind. So it's gonna be a little slicier too than the Vision, and a little bit of a thinner tip, but still going to give you a lot of strength. So it's a great crossover blade as well. You can hunt around and find the green handle G10 version for about 100 to 125, depends on where you pick it up, and then the black carbon fiber handle version for like 145. So those are excellent choices. Now to the light version of the Vision, and we got lots of like moving parts here, so I'm going to try to be as concise as I can, is going to be about $30 more for that extra ounce of weight cutting and carbon fiber scales. So they're running usually between 175 and 180. And there's no other differences in the designing, the steel, anything outside of some different color combinations on the handle scales, and then 1 ounce lighter. And so for that extra $25 to $30 price point jump, I just don't really see the value there, and I would just stick with the original if it was me. So I hope that this has been helpful for you guys as a whole. I mean, I think that there are a lot of really good points to the Vision. It's not leaving my collection anytime soon because I love the blade shape, the steel, and outside of a few of those little wonky details with the pivot mainly, I really enjoy using the tool in certain scenarios, and definitely is something I gravitate to depending on maybe where I'm going and I want that backup, you know, tool for certain scenarios, you know what I mean, and those type of things. So that is my take, but I look forward to hearing from you guys. What's your take on the SOG Vision XR and the light version? If you own one, what's been your experience? I always appreciate your guys' comments below. If you haven't yet subscribed, I invite you to subscribe, check out the other video popping up, and until next time, always remember, stay equipped, stay prepared, and I'll see you out there.